Hey guys, how are you? How are you doing today? I'm so excited because my birthday is coming. This spring chicken is gonna be 41. I think yesterday I sat down and I was like, oh my God, in 9 years' time, I'm gonna be 50. It's interesting because I've always like had this perspective of this like forward-looking perspective. I remember when I was 20, always thinking like, I can't wait to be 40. I can't wait to be 40. It was just something that I was so eager about concerning age 40. I didn't know what it was, but I think honestly now I do because last year was the year that I had what I really would consider like my very first encounter with Jesus Christ. And so who knows? Anyway, yeah, I am going to be 41 in a couple of days and I'm excited. I'm excited because there's so much life, there's a lot of fulfillment. Life couldn't be better. There's like a lot of trials, but still, I still have to confess that life could not be any better. Okay, I have a word for us today. But first of all, let me just anchor the scripture that I'm reading. We're going to be in Exodus chapter 32. Let's read from verse 1 to verse 3. Let me give you guys a quick backstory. So we're on the backdrop of Moses consecrating himself and the people and him going up to the mountain to go have like this intimate one-on-one with the Father for about 40 days. That's how long he actually remained on the mountain. So the Israelites are obviously down at the bottom of the mountain, all how many million of them, and they're with Aaron, who Moses puts in charge of them while Moses is gone. And so this is then where this verse begins. So it says, when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people gathered around Aaron and said to him, "Come, make gods for us, who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." This verse is packed, heavily packed. If you guys have been following me, I have been in the book of like Genesis, Exodus since November of last year. I know that we have like Bible plans that would be like read the Bible in 1 year and 2 years and all that, which is amazing. But somehow it's been eating this book is like, I don't even know. It's like nibbles and chewing it and like regurgitating and then chewing it some more. Sorry, I know this might sound crazy, but this one verse is so packed. So I want to just share what the Lord shared with me today, and I'm hoping that it blesses one of you. So when I was reading the verse, I want to tell you just a couple of things that jumped out to me. So it says that when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain. So it says when the people saw that Moses delayed. So the first word that jumped out was the word saw. So seeing with their eyes in the physical, interpreting whatever is going on by using just their physical senses. So when they saw that, okay, this guy who had led them out of Egypt, this guy who had promised them that they were going to get to the promised land, this guy who had been leading them every single day, he's the same person who had, walked them through the divided Red Sea. So Moses is like a foreshadowing of Christ, right? He's like an archetype. He's like a type of Jesus. And so he's like a shepherd to the people of Israel. And so all of a sudden, this guy who had been with the Israelites day in and day out and day in and day out, he disappears, right? Even though they know where he went, right? But he disappears to the mountains for 40 days. And at some point, the Israelites are becoming a little unsteady. They're feeling maybe a little anxious. And I'm saying this kind of slowly because I'm hoping that someone catches this revelation, because the times that you have felt a little uneasy because whatever it is, whatever sign God was giving you to reveal his constant presence in your life, that there are seasons that you walk into that sign isn't really there anymore. It just feels like, is God still here? We begin to ask that question. We begin to wonder, have I made the wrong turn? You're praying and you're calling on God, but it almost seems like he's silent, like he's not as loud and as visible as he's been, the last, 1 month, 1 year. And so I'm like putting myself in the position of the Israelites, and that's what I'm experiencing is, all of a sudden, this Moses, who was their leader, who was the visible representation of Christ, who was their shepherd, this is the person that they were trying to put their trust in, even though they were struggling with that. All of a sudden, he's gone. And then the next thing it says is that they see that Moses delayed from coming down. So not only is he gone, visibly disappeared, they then interpret that silence. They interpret whatever that is as a delay. Please catch this revelation, guys. For those of you that the Lord has given you a word, just like he gave Moses the word and said, I'm going to deliver my people and they're going to worship me on the mountain. And then he has this place, this land flowing with milk and honey for them. That for some of us, God has given us a word. And he may have given us the word last year, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever, right? God has given us a word. And he has constantly given you signs and shown you in different seasons that he is still there and that his word is still alive. And then a season comes where it just seems like, again, he's not there. And then we begin to interpret the fact that these signs are in there, or the fact that the word hasn't come to fulfillment. We then begin to interpret it as a delay, not knowing that it's actually just God's timing. We begin to put our own man-made timelines on things that God is, on God things. We begin to put our own timeline, and then we start spiraling. We start getting anxious. We start getting afraid, and we start getting depressed. And then we're wondering, I'm so depressed. Why am I feeling this way? And we think it's an external thing that's causing the problem, not knowing that we have shifted our eyes from Christ to our own expectations. We have literally put our expectations on God's word. And now it's not showing up as it should in our minds. It's not playing out as we expect it to. We then begin to lose ground. We begin to feel unsteady. So then it says that when they saw that Moses delayed from coming down from the mountain, the people gathered around Aaron and said to him, "Come, make gods for us who shall go before us." What's underneath this verse is this reminder that when God made us in his image, that there is something that he put in every single man, a deep longing and a yearning for identity, for protection, for salvation, to be seen, to be valued. That longing God put inside of us is supposed to be the thing that draws us nearer to him. And so when you see that they tell Aaron, okay, we don't see Moses with our eyes anymore. All the things that were visible that let us know that God was with us is kind of gone. And so now we've lost trust in this God who was faithful throughout the entire time. And we now, interpret the fact that he's gone as a delay. And so now we go, okay, I need to fill in the gap that what would I describe it as? This feeling of a void. I need to fill that void by myself. And we don't realize that in the moment when we shift our focus from God to what we consider as the lack or the delay or whatever else we want to call it, the next thing that happens is that we begin to put our hands into things that we're not supposed to be putting our hands into. We begin to look for ways to fill in the void with everything and anything around us, with money, with chasing wealth, prosperity in whatever way that looks like to some of us. We begin to chase women, chase men, chase relationships. We begin to pour or get our identity from our children, from our jobs, from the things that we're building, from, TV and music and telephones. And we begin to fill in the void. And what's the void? The need for validation, we look for it in people. The need to feel needed, we look for it in relationships. The need to feel like we are important, we look for that in achievements in our jobs. the need to feel like you are blessed even without you having to wait. We go and figure it out and want to acquire wealth to give us identity and value and a sense of meaning. But we don't realize that what we're doing in those moments is that we're saying to Aaron, just like we're saying to the world, we're saying to Satan, go, make gods for me that can go before me. Make gods for me that can make me feel valued. Make a God for me that will make me feel important. Make a God for me that will validate me. Make a God for me that will never leave or abandon me. Make a God for me. You know, we don't realize just because the golden calf was so easy to spot in the Old Testament, but in the New Testament, the golden calf has been infused into culture, has been infused into tradition, have been infused into lifestyles, have been infused into the empire and the way things run, even in our businesses and our lives and our jobs. Just because the golden calf is not as visible doesn't mean it still doesn't exist. We have then gone and then asked the world and asked Satan to make calves for us that we can serve, to make calves for us that will now meet our needs rather than going to God Almighty to meet those needs for us. And then they go on and then they say, we do not know what has become of him. So they're saying, Aaron, build these calves for us that we can serve, these calves that can go before us, because we do not know where Moses has gone to. And we ask the same question. We're praying and asking and praising, and we're in fasting, and we fast 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. We don't hear the voice of God, and we just abandon everything and we go, you know what, I'm just gonna... And then we just go to the next best thing. Because you know what? I don't know if God is still with me. I don't know if he's here. I don't know where he's gone to. Now let me tell you what I find that God is asking for us in those moments. Just because the signs for us, the signs that make us feel that God is there, just because those signs are no longer there doesn't mean God is no longer there. Just because we don't feel his presence doesn't mean that he no longer sees us, doesn't mean that he no longer cares for us. Just because the thing that he promised is not coming to pass in our own timeline doesn't mean that God is a liar. No, what it means is that we have shifted focus. And this is the reason why God keeps telling us to guard our hearts, guard our hearts, guard our hearts. Why? Because when temptations come, the luring of temptation is not like, oh my God, something happened to me. No, the luring of temptation is to pull from inside of us the desires of our hearts. And when we keep feeding it, giving it all the things that it's asking for, our desires give birth to sin, and sin eventually gives birth to death. Just like here, we see the desire for the presence of God. Instead of us to wait, instead of the Israelites to wait, stand firm, don yourself with the armor of God, and when you're done, stand and pray. But wait patiently on the Lord. And the truth of the matter is that the waiting is our greatest obstacle. The waiting is the thing that we hate the most. There is no human that I believe enjoys waiting. None of us enjoy waiting. We need to put our hands into things and create and manufacture our lives for our own selves. To wait on God's timing is difficult for us. But that's what we need the most. We need to be able to stand firm and wait while God does what God does. And I remembered asking, I was talking to my coworkers and I said, just because they didn't know where Moses was, just because they didn't know what he was doing, just because they didn't know how long he was going to take and when he was going to return, did it mean that nothing was happening? The entire time, God was laying the foundation for the Israelites and their generations to come. He was setting every single thing in motion for them. He was curating the 10 Commandments, a principle, a guideline, something that they would follow that would help break Egypt from inside of their mentality. The thing that they call the delay was God's appointed time to have intimacy with Moses, to bring out the path. It's like while they're there, God is giving Moses light to illuminate their path to the promised land. And so for us, the question is, are we willing to wait? Are we willing to wait on God to tell us the next step? Who to be with? You're a woman waiting for marriage and you're like, yeah, this is, I don't know why God is delaying. God is delaying. And so you do the same thing that they've done and you go create me an idol. And you change the way you dress. You change the way you talk, And then you go to the world and figure out, where does the world find husbands? Where does the world find wives? And you go to bars and you go to clubs and you go to all these places because you know what? I know I'm going to find a man. I know I'm going to find a woman. You go and you want to curate your own spouse. You want to make your own timeline come to pass. And this is the truth about the waiting. When we don't wait well, we end up giving birth to Ishmael. Apostle Salman talked about this yesterday and it was amazing. When we refuse to wait, we end up giving birth to Ishmael. Ishmael was not the promised son, but he was a son. But we end up giving birth to Ishmael. And the promise still ends up coming. But you see, the Ishmaels in our lives, they end up being a pain. They end up being the consequences of our sin. And God will forgive us. God will restore us back to intimacy with Him. But you see the consequence? We deal with the consequences. In fact, let me move on to the next verse because might as well. Now the next verse 2 then says, Aaron said to them, take off the gold rings that are on your ears of your wives, the ears of your sons, and the ears of your daughters, and bring them to me. And so all the people took off all the rings from their ears and brought them to Aaron. He took the gold from them, formed it into a mold, and cast an image of a calf. And they said, these are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. And then when Aaron saw that, Aaron built an altar before it. And then he made a proclamation and said, tomorrow shall be a festival to the Lord. Look, I need to spend time with God to figure out, because the Aaron part, I don't even understand it at all. I do not understand it. But I know the Lord is going to give more revelation concerning it. But I want to end today by talking about the consequences of the Israelites' decision. When Aaron said to them, bring the jewelry from your ears, your children's ears, your sons, your daughters, and your wives, they didn't even know that they were building an altar, and the consequence of that altar was going to pass down to generations. And so for some of us now, we're dealing with the impact of decisions and altars that were built by our forefathers. And we're dealing with that impact now. And I think God is calling us by grace, letting us see the pattern and the traditions that we have adopted from the altars that our forefathers served. And He's calling us to be set apart from it. He's calling us to now destroy and dismantle that altar. That golden calf, He's saying no more, because I am the Lord your God. And then He's asking, who are you going to serve? Are you going to serve me? Or are you going to continue to serve the patterns? Are you going to continue to serve the traditions? Are you going to continue to serve your emotions? Are you going to continue to serve your senses, your physical senses? That's what God is asking today. Are we willing to wait? Are we willing to stand firm? For me, I'm going to tell you, there is no better place to be than to be standing and waiting on the Lord for His appointed time. There is no better place, because I would rather have my Isaac than deal with multiple Ishmaels in my life. All right, guys. Hope you guys have a good one. Thank you so much for listening. And once the Lord gives me more information about Aaron, I'm going to come back, because Aaron he's a shepherd in our lives. And I think just being wary and having a discerning spirit concerning the shepherds that we have in our lives, the people-pleasing shepherds, the ones who are not fully surrendered to God. And just for us to learn to discern properly. So, all right, guys, thank you so much. Have a good one. Bye.